We have a minute. Spine stability is my favorite. Well, let's end on that, okay? Because that's so common. It's like dominates the biomechanical world. How often have any studies actually measured spine stability? Yeah. Just one. This just came out. 30 years we've been saying it's spinal instability, like for regular low back pain, and no one has actually measured it in people with pain. That's what's amazing. They measure during exercises when you're lifting things, but they've never shown people with pain are more likely to have this mechanical instability, where it's a very complicated way to measure it. I don't blame anyone. It's not something you could do in the clinic. So these guys did a study. They're great biomechanists. They had 2 training programs. One was like a motor control program trying to improve stability, and the other was a general exercise with the front, back, and sides of the core. Right? Guess what happened to both groups? They got better a little bit because it's exercise. Guess what happens to the stability? Inconsistent changes, not related to pain. Classic. Right? So you go back to that rule number 4. Does it have to change? Doesn't seem like it has to. So how relevant is it? Cool. Same thing with the glutes, gluteal amnesia. Where's that one? People say like your glutes are more likely to be less active when you have pain. I can think of maybe 5 or 6 studies where they're more active. So this is people, what's this one with? With hip OA, glute is more active. Right? It's another one of those things that we say, and when you go actually look for the research, there's rodeo now? What was that? Yeah, it's just not there. Glutes, gluteal again, these guys show, what was that? Individuals with chronic low back pain. During the prone leg extension test, we actually did this paper in, again, 2004. Everyone had a delayed glute max in our healthy population. My wife was in that study. I recruited her specifically for her glutes. Very unethical. Nowadays, you wouldn't get away with that. And then it was awesome because she sprained her ankle. I was like, "You're the best." So I love you so much. Now you're going to be in my study. And so she sprained her ankle, and so I had her data from being normal, like uninjured, and then we followed her for eight weeks. With her prone leg extension and how nothing really changed in the glute max. It was a big theory at the time. A distal dysfunction will lead to proximal dysfunction, and nothing happened. And I go to publish it, and they're like, do you have ethical and consent to do this? And I'm like, we're married. I own her. That's so weird. I lost some of you. I don't know. Okay, I think we're done. Yeah? Okay, thank you for having me. Could have been a lot worse.
So we've got a little time for Q&A. At the same time, again, yes, I'm getting a question back here. Coming. Microphone coming.
It's stumping me.
Hi, thank you for the lecture. It was very entertaining and as well educational. I'm wondering what the story is then that we can tell patients as to why these exercises help, as opposed to just giving them that biomechanical excuse of this is what it is.
That's a nice one, because then it's like, why does exercise help? Which is tough, because then it's actually very difficult. And this is why it's difficult to prescribe exercise for people in pain, because we don't really know what our true target is. Right? What needs to change to get someone out of pain? Right? That's why I start our little course with talk about tendinopathy. What actually has to change to turn that tendinosis into possibly having less nociception, or maybe how we deal with the nociception? We're not really sure. That's what's difficult. So the other way to look at it is, what's great about exercise? Right? What has exercise been shown to do related to pain? So one would be, in the short term, most people get contraction-induced analgesia. If you start loading up a joint, in the short term, you can have less pain. Another thing would be, sometimes it's good to do an exercise into pain, and we have something called habituation, where we can actually habituate to painful activity, and slowly over time, the nociception is the same, but our response to that nociception is less. Or we could say that it's if you start doing an exercise and you have less pain or you don't have a flare-up, what does that tell you? You sort of get confidence in your body again, right? That you're not weak and that you're not frail. So it challenges, your thought process of what goes on, and then maybe that's sort of a psychological intervention where you're less catastrophizing, less rumination there. You have feelings of like greater self-efficacy, because now when you're doing exercise, you're using your body again. And if exercise or that physical activity is important to you, now you start resuming those meaningful activities, and you are you again. So exercise itself, probably, I would never say everyone has to exercise. But physical activity and doing things you love is probably more important. And sometimes, if I'm pessimistic, I think we kind of mess people up when we tell them they have to exercise. Because it's okay to help with pain, but it's certainly not a panacea. And then you have all these patients like, oh, I'm in pain, I'm so sorry, it's my fault, I didn't do my exercises this week. And then you got to say, well, what is it that you want to do? Well, then you can do that instead of your exercise. So it's patient-led. Does that help at all? Yeah, and there's more to it. There's a paper by Stilwell in the Canadian Chiropractic magazine about like the sort of biopsychosocial aspect of exercise, and there's one with, I forget the first author, but I think both Mosley and Hodges and Falla have one out, but it's not that BPS, but Mosley has one out with, I forget the first author, where it's like the biopsychosocial effects of exercise. So I'll look at that. You can email me if you want it. I got it.
So we had another question towards the back here. And while the microphone's heading over there, could you say something about some of the resources you provide that you make available to clinicians?
Yeah, sure. On my website is the Recovery Strategies book, which is just like a 70-page book you can download. It's free. It's set up to be like every page could be an infographic that maybe addresses one thing related to pain. So you can either use the whole book, or maybe it's just a concept about pain that you want to get, pain and recovery that you want to get across. And then I have I don't know how to disseminate this because it's weird, but I have like a free public folder on Google. I don't know how. I should put a link on my web. Yeah, that's the internet. Yeah, that's what I'll use. Yeah, you just saw some problem solving in real time there. It's like a free folder of research papers and stuff like that. Yeah.
All right, another question?
So pretty much I'm a recent grad, so just watching this kind of just blow my mind. So I recently started seeing something on, I think it was Facebook or Twitter or something,
Never heard of
where
it.
people were arguing over static posture and its role in injury.
Yeah.
And people were arguing about different research papers that they were coming up showing that it does, and a bunch of other people arguing that it doesn't, and saying that it's more of the postural strain rather than the actual posture itself. Can you kind of elaborate more on that, or if you know any background on that?
I mean, to me, it's, again, it goes back to, I mean, no doubt if you do this all day, your neck might be sore. But that's why we have nociceptors, right? That's why none of you right now are getting like an ass ulcer, right? You know a joke, ass ulcer. It's like my Greek god name, guy, free of ass ulcers, ass ulcer. Anyways, but your nociception will catalyze that movement. And if it's going to be a problem, you're going to get out of it. Like, who cares if your neck is leaning forward a bit? Or if it hurts, you'll move. And if not, you'll just adapt to it. The loads are so little. Like, what would the problem be? Right? So I never even understand the plausible explanation for how posture could be related to pain. I mean, this isn't great for function, right? You can't lift your arms up. So there, it's like I would advocate working on getting upright regularly if you want to lift your arms up over your head. But in terms of pain, it never seemed that plausible to me. And then we're seeing that now. There's that recent paper by Philo. He's the last author out of Brazil. There's like a massive study with 18 to 21-year-olds in text neck position is not even associated with pain, right? So does that help at all? Or, I mean, it's one of those. And in practice, it doesn't make a difference. So if it hurts to do this, what are you going to do for a little bit? Well, don't do that. Do you know what I mean? And if you can't do that, we say, well, this might be painful. Well, that's not the only thing that might be driving your sensitivity. What else is going on in your life that's sensitizing you? Okay. I don't know if that helps.
Well, one question I'm going to jump in with
I noticed.
is when Coming from your background,
Yeah.
is
Canadian.
in biomechanics.
Debonair. That's not where I was going, but yeah.
Coming from your background in biomechanics, at what point, like, how was that transition of becoming more comfortable with what we now consider a biopsychosocial approach?
Oh, no, I had no problem with it because the biomechanists I worked with when I was younger at Waterloo, the occupational biomechanists, they knew then in the 90s that just changing people's workplace mechanically wasn't enough. You needed buy-in. That's where participatory ergonomics came from, getting the people, the stakeholders, to change the workplace. We knew psychosocial factors were huge with occupational pain and injury in the 80s. So none of that stuff was new. And so I never had to make some big shift. The two chiropractors I work with, when I did my master's, they were doing their PhD, Kim Ross and Dave Bereznik. They just dismantled all the stuff for me. So I never had to go through the trouble that other people might have. It's funny, none of this stuff is new. No one is saying anything new here this weekend. No offense.